All right, let's get right into it. I am so thrilled to have you here today because we're going to unpack some truly fascinating data. We are decoding the latest quantitative findings from the Reflections of Reality Substack to uncover a profound non-consensus market edge. Specifically, we're diving deep into the Convergence brief and its conclusions. Now, this brief is powerfully built upon two underlying pillars, the Polymarket Macro Monitor and the Weekly Report. Get ready because the data we're looking at today challenges the mainstream narrative in a really profound way.
But before we really dig in, I do need to cover a quick disclaimer. The content presented in this explainer is intended solely for general informational and educational purposes. Nothing herein constitutes or should be construed as financial, investment, legal, or tax advice. You should not act or rely on any information in this explainer without seeking the advice of a qualified financial professional. Also, just so you know, this explainer is an AI-generated product produced using Notebook LM. It automatically summarizes and synthesizes reports, analyses, and commentary originally published at reflectionsofreality.substack.com. All views, opinions, and analyses expressed are those of the original author and do not represent the views of any financial institution or regulator. Past performance is not indicative of future results. All investments involve risk, including possible loss of principal. Copyright Reflections of Reality, all original content rights reserved. Okay, here is our roadmap for today. 1. The breadth paradox. 2. Lens 1, polymarket odds. 3. Lens 2, capital flows. 4. The convergence verdict. And 5. Actionable trading takeaways. Let's jump in.
Section 1. The Goldilocks breadth paradox. A market illusion? So I want you to ask yourself a question. Is the market really in a Goldilocks phase right now? I mean, if you're just skimming the financial headlines, the answer seems like an obvious, resounding yes. Everyone is talking about it. But when we actually peel back the layers and look at the quantitative data, it tells a much deeper, kind of troubling story. It's exactly what the Convergence brief calls the Goldilocks breadth paradox. See, according to the Weekly Report, the quote-unquote Goldilocks macro season reading just shot up by 12.5 percentage points, landing at 70.6%. That is the strongest reading we've seen in months. It paints this unambiguously bullish risk-on picture, right? Like growth is beating inflation, and from a high-level seasonal perspective, everything just looks absolutely perfect. But hold on a second. Beneath all that headline euphoria, the Convergence brief comes in with a massive warning. It points out that the underlying market breadth, the actual health of the stocks under the hood, is sitting at a pretty dismal 40.9%. That is way below the 50% threshold. This is literally signaling dangerous internal erosion. It's like a giant illusion where the headline index looks totally fine, but the majority of stocks beneath the surface are really struggling. Section 2, Lens 1. Polymarket odds, forward-looking probabilities. To figure out this paradox, we're going to look through our first analytical lens, the Polymarket Macro Monitor. This is such a brilliant tool because it shows us what prediction markets, where real hard cash is actually on the line, are pricing in for the future. And wow, we're looking at a stark, hawkish reality here. The crowd over on Polymarket is assigning a staggering 77.7% probability to zero Fed rate cuts in 2026. Plus, there's a massive 94.5% chance of no rate change in July. That completely shatters the legacy consensus fantasy of some imminent dovish pivot. The market is bracing for a highly restrictive regime, for sure. And on the flip side of the prediction market, let's talk about systemic tech. There's an 89.5% probability of NVIDIA staying the largest company by the end of June. That just underscores this intense AI exceptionalism, right? It's riding the massive AI infrastructure cycle. But at the exact same time, it's exposing the broader tech index to extreme concentration risk. I mean, the top 5 names are commanding over 45% of the weight. That's a huge vulnerability. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway, the massive consensus gap. Legacy forecasts like the Bloomberg median are still out there predicting 50 basis points of easing. But the polymarket reality? It demands we face hawkish persistence, a higher for longer regime, and elevated real yields. And just looking at this impartially, this massive spread between legacy forecasts and crowdsourced probabilities creates a serious structural trading opportunity. Section 3. Lens 2. Capital flows. The real-time quantitative machinery. Let's see how all this builds into our second lens, the Weekly Report. We're looking at the real-time quantitative flow machinery here to see where institutional capital is actually rotating today. We are completely ignoring what analysts say they intend to do. When we map out the rotation of large cap equities, it completely strips away all the noise to show us the cold, hard capital flows. You're getting a real-time expression of exactly where institutional money is hiding and where it's fleeing.
Let's break down the tactical signatures from the tape. First off, we see a massive U.S. Treasury 7 to 10-year collapse, hitting a score of -61. That is a highly negative reading and acts as a direct blaring duration unwind signal. The bond market is not waiting around. We're also seeing narrow accumulation happening, but only in defensive sectors like utilities and insurance. There's rotation into safe havens and heavy rotation out, plus outright liquidation across the board. The tape basically proves the market is already actively positioning for trouble.
Section 4. The Convergence Brief. Verdict. Where two lenses meet. This is the exact spot where our forward-looking probabilities seamlessly lock in with our real-time capital flow data. Check out the verdict column on this matrix. The polymarket signal of 77.7% for zero cuts, it perfectly matches the weekly report's Treasury duration unwind. The prediction markets and the quantitative tape are in complete, perfect agreement here. A higher for longer, restrictive, defensive regime is hardening. They aren't contradicting each other at all. They're literally photographing the exact same market regime from two entirely different angles. Section 5. Actionable trading takeaways. Navigating the rotation map. Let's distill all this dense quantitative synthesis down into exact, actionable trading takeaways straight from the Convergence Brief. How do we actually navigate this defensive map? Well, when we analyze the quantitative performance metrics detailed in the Substack, it reminds us of one golden rule. Gaining an edge relies on strictly following the actual distribution of outcomes and the hard data. We absolutely cannot get swept up in all that Goldilocks headline noise. So here are the highest conviction moves right now. First, what the brief calls kiss cash. Keep it simple, stupid, is the absolute cleanest expression of this convergence thesis. You have to refuse to add risk in a defensive map. By just holding cash, you preserve your capital and maintain full optionality for a much safer re-entry later on. Meanwhile, you want to aggressively tighten stops on your structural winners. As a great example, the brief explicitly notes raising the stop on Eli Lilly to 1,069.50. You do that to lock in gains and protect your capital while this rotation plays out. To get the full ongoing framework updates, I highly recommend checking out The Source and subscribing directly at reflectionsofreality.substack.com. Seriously, it's a fantastic resource. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you with this one provocative final thought. Take a really close look at your own exposure. Ask yourself, are your portfolios positioned for that rosy Goldilocks headline, or are they actually braced for the market's hidden breath erosion reality? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer today. Stay focused out there and keep following the data.